Is this some kind of joke? The voice, sharp and brimming with the misplaced confidence of youth, cut across the desert air. Corporal Evans, barely out of his teenage years but wearing his Marine Corps uniform like armor, gestured dismissively toward the rifle resting on the shooting bench. "Sir, you can't be serious about bringing that thing here." Alan Palmer, 82 years old, his life etched into the lines of his face and the calm set of his jaw, didn't turn his head. His eyes stayed locked on the targets shimmering in the desert heat, the mirage twisting them into ghost-like shapes. Sitting on a plain stool, his posture was relaxed yet firmly grounded. The rifle in question was unusual. Its custom-built chassis and stock were coated in a flat, bright orange, more like a construction sign or a child's toy than a weapon. It stood out awkwardly against the desert tans, matte blacks, and olive greens of the modern military rifles that lined the range. A freckled private first class nearby smirked. "Maybe he thinks it's a water gun, Corporal. For when he gets thirsty." The group of young Marines with their crisp uniforms and sharp haircuts chuckled together. They were the new generation, skilled with digital scopes and ballistic calculators. To them, the old man and his oddly colored rifle were relics of a bygone era, little more than an amusing sideshow before their real training began. Evans stepped closer, his shadow falling across Palmer's bench. "I'm going to need you to pack up, sir. This range is for active duty personnel. We're running advanced sniper drills." He motioned again at the orange rifle. "That thing is both a distraction and a safety issue." His tone carried the carefully practiced mix of authority and condescension common to a young man certain he holds the upper hand. But Palmer stayed quiet, his hands resting calmly on his knees. The stillness unsettled the corporal more than an argument ever could. It wasn't passive resistance. It was the kind of deep patience that felt like a silent reprimand. The Mojave Desert Range was usually alive with thunderous shots and calculated precision. But now, in this small corner, the standoff had created an uneasy quiet. Shooters at nearby benches had paused, conversations fading as eyes turned toward the one-sided confrontation. The tension in the air had nothing to do with bullets or targets. Misreading Palmer's silence as defiance, Evans pressed harder. His voice grew louder, a clear breach of range etiquette. "Did you hear me, old man? I said pack it up. What are you even doing here? This isn't bingo night at the VFW." He leaned in, lowering his voice to a stage whisper that was still loud enough for others to catch. "You probably don't even have clearance to be on this base." At last, Palmer moved. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for his simple canvas range bag. The Marine stiffened, expecting him to comply. Instead, he pulled out a worn leather wallet, softened by decades of use. From it, he produced a laminated card, his base access permit, and silently held it out. Evans snatched the card, gave it a quick glance, then blinked in surprise. "This has to be expired or fake." He flipped it over and over, as if waiting for the plastic to reveal some trick. The credentials revealed the truth. The name read Palmer, Alan J., and to Evans' visible frustration, everything was valid. He shoved the card back at the older man, irritated by his inability to find grounds to remove him. "Fine, you have clearance," Evans admitted. His voice clipped. "But that doesn't mean you get to experiment here. We've got a 4,000-meter target set for our final qualification. That system is a multi-million-dollar sensor suite, not a backdrop for your personal project." He gestured toward the distant target, barely visible to the naked eye. "We're working at the limits of current technology. The last thing we need is interference from whatever that thing is, throwing off our data." The private first class, encouraged by his corporal's tone, reached out and tapped the bright orange rifle stock with a finger. "Feels like cheap plastic. You probably printed it in your garage." The instant the Marine's finger touched the weapon, Alan Palmer's expression changed. For a brief moment, the calm, steady eyes of the older man vanished, replaced by something cold and unyielding. The desert sun reflecting off the rifle's scope disappeared, replaced by the dim light of a field tent heavy with the smell of cordite and blood. He felt again the weight of a wounded comrade leaning against him, heard the distant rhythm of mortar fire creeping closer. A strained young voice echoed in his memory. "They're coming, Al. They know we're here. You have to finish it." The orange color wasn't a joke. It was meant to make him visible, to guide the rescue chopper above the thick jungle canopy. A single flash of unnatural color in a sea of green and brown, a final beacon of survival. Palmer blinked and the vision faded. replaced by the glaring desert sun and the amused faces of the young Marines. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but there was a subtle shift in the air around him. The silence carried a new weight, its calmness edged with something deeper, almost unspoken. Across the firing line near the tower stood Gunny Miller, once a master sergeant, now a civilian range safety officer, he observed quietly. Over the years he had dealt with plenty of cocky young NCOs, but this time felt different. It wasn't simply about arrogance or lack of respect, it was about who they were dismissing. The older man wasn't just another casual shooter. The way he held himself showed precision and restraint, a discipline that spoke volumes. Even the rifle he carried, unusual in design, wasn't just a hobbyist's gadget. Its streamlined form revealed the mark of a finely crafted tool built for purpose, not amusement. Miller studied it carefully. He had seen a weapon like that only once before, long ago, during a classified briefing about a ghostly figure, an unconfirmed legend from a war barely covered in history books. His thoughts shifted back to the sign-in sheet he'd checked earlier. The name was there. Palmer, Alan J. Recognition struck, and unease settled heavily in his gut. These young soldiers didn't realize the mistake they were making. They weren't mocking just another veteran. They were provoking someone far more dangerous, someone better left undisturbed. Miller exhaled slowly, turned away from the range and pulled out his phone. Walking behind the tower, away from the escalating situation, he ended the call before the officer could ask further questions. Miller knew he had sparked something. Now all he could do was wait, and hope it wouldn't explode in everyone's face. Inside the sterile, climate-controlled command center, Lieutenant Harris stared at his phone. Gunny Miller wasn't the type to exaggerate. Harris keyed in the name Alan J. Palmer into the global military personnel database. The system processed for a moment before a warning appeared. A bold red flag. Access restricted, eyes only. 07 and above. Harris felt the shock like touching a live wire. Level 07 clearance meant Brigadier General authority. He was only a second lieutenant. Without hesitation, he rose from his desk and moved quickly toward the base commander's office. A full colonel, he knocked once but stepped in before a reply. "Sir, you'll want to see this." The colonel looked up, his weathered face lined with decades of desert campaigns, irritation in his eyes. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "I just got a call from Gunny Miller at the long range," Harris explained. "There's a civilian out there, Alan Palmer." Palmer's name triggered an immediate alert in the system. The colonel's expression shifted in an instant. He left his chair, walked around the desk, and leaned over the lieutenant's monitor. The moment he read the name, the color drained from his face. Without a word, he reached for the secure phone on his desk, the direct line to the commanding general of the entire base. "Ma'am, this is Colonel Price. Forgive the interruption. Palmer is here. He's on our range right now." A brief silence followed. "Yes, ma'am. The ghost of the valley. He's in a standoff with some of our reconnaissance Marines." The colonel listened again, his expression tightening further. "Yes, ma'am. I'll meet you at your vehicle. We're moving now." He ended the call sharply, then turned toward Harris. His eyes carried an intensity the lieutenant had never seen before. "Get me the commander of 1st Recon. Tell him his career is at stake. General Marcus is on his way to his position personally, and God help his Marines." Back at the range, Corporal Evans's patience had finally worn thin. The old man's quiet refusal to move now felt like a direct insult. With the crowd around them growing, Evans sensed his authority, his very standing as a Marine NCO, being challenged by an elderly man holding a strange orange gun. He decided the situation needed to end. "All right, that's it. I'm done asking," he snapped, his voice edged with frustration. "You are a danger to this facility and my Marines. I am ordering you to leave this firing point immediately. If you refuse, I'll have you detained for trespassing and interfering with a training exercise. And you'll get a thorough mental evaluation. Maybe you're confused, old man. Maybe you forgot where you are." Evans stepped forward sharply, reaching for Alan Palmer's shoulder with the intent of removing him from the bench by force. But he never got the chance. It began with a low rumble, a vibration rising through the soles of their boots. Within seconds, it swelled into the thunderous roar of multiple high-performance engines pushed to their limit. Every head on the range turned. Toward the main access road, a cloud of dust rose into the sky. trailing behind a convoy of 3 black government-plated SUVs led by a Humvee that advanced at alarming speed. They weren't simply driving, they were charging. Instead of pulling into the designated parking area, the convoy cut across directly onto the dirt range, braking hard to a stop just a few yards from the standoff. Dust had barely begun to settle when doors swung open and figures stepped out with a level of precision that instantly outclassed the young recon Marines. From the lead SUV emerged Colonel Price, but it was the passenger from the second vehicle who drew every eye. Brigadier General Marcus, a woman with a reputation forged in battle and an unyielding presence, stepped onto the field. Her uniform was spotless, the single star on her shoulder catching the desert light. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, swept across the scene, taking in Corporal Evans's defiant stance, the bewildered expressions of his squad, and finally locking on the calm figure of Alan Palmer. Without acknowledging anyone else, she advanced with steady, deliberate steps straight toward the old man. The range fell into complete silence. The only sounds were her boots crunching against the gravel and the faint tick of engines cooling nearby. Corporal Evans stood rigid, his hand still raised where he had been about to seize Alan. His gaze darted between the general and the old man, struggling to comprehend the moment. General Marcus stopped directly in front of Palmer. She didn't say a word. Instead, she snapped her heels together, raised her arm, and delivered the sharpest salute Evans had ever seen. It wasn't the routine gesture expected between ranks. It was a salute charged with deep respect. With a tone of deep respect, the kind a warrior reserves for a living legend, she spoke firmly, her words carrying across the silent range. "Mr. Palmer," she said, "it is an honor, sir. I apologize for the behavior of my Marines. They do not understand who they are addressing." Her salute remained steady as she waited. Alan Palmer rose slowly from his stool. Though no longer the tall figure he once was, his posture remained upright, defying the weight of years. He gave a slight, deliberate nod of acknowledgement. Only then did the general lower her salute. She turned sharply toward Corporal Evans. The warmth in her expression vanished, replaced by an icy glare. "Corporal," she said, her voice low and cutting, "do you have any idea who this man is?" Evans, pale and trembling, stammered, "No, ma'am, he's a civilian, ma'am." "A civilian?" The general let out a short, dry laugh. "Corporal, you and your men are standing on ground you did not earn, breathing air you have not paid for in the presence of a man who helped shape the very world you now serve. This is no ordinary civilian. This is Alan Palmer." She spoke the name as if delivering a sacred truth. She paused. Let the weight of her words settle, her eyes scanning the crowd before her. For those of you too young or simply unaware, allow me to explain. This man has received the nation's highest civilian award for valor. For 3 decades, he worked as a special projects consultant with DARPA. Before that, he served in locations your textbooks don't even mention. He is recognized for 5 confirmed kills at distances over 2,500 yards, a record that stood for nearly 40 years. Each of those shots was made with a rifle he personally designed and built. Our modern sniper doctrine exists largely because of his innovations. We call him the Ghost of the Valley, not because he's gone, but because he went into places others could not. Completed missions few would attempt and always returned without a trace. She moved closer to the shooting bench, motioning toward the bright orange rifle. "And this so-called toy you mocked? This is the Mark V, the prototype of the M210 sniper system you're carrying right now, Corporal. Only this version is superior. He built it inside a forward operating base using spare parts and a block of aluminum. As for the orange paint you find amusing, it wasn't decoration. Medevac helicopters needed to see his position for extraction, after he held off an entire enemy platoon alone for 3 days to protect a downed pilot. That color saved his life, and the life of that pilot, who later rose to the rank of 4-star general." The silence across the range was now complete, heavy with shame and respect. Corporal Evans looked as though he wished the earth would swallow him whole. His fellow Marines, who only minutes earlier had been laughing and joking, now stared down at their boots, faces burning with embarrassment. General Marcus turned back toward the corporal, her voice lowering into a firm, menacing tone. You did not see a veteran. You saw an old man. You did not recognize a living piece of history. You saw a toy. You mistook strength for weakness. And in doing so, you dishonored your uniform, your company, and yourselves. She raised a single trembling finger and pointed at him. You and your entire squad will report to my office at 600 tomorrow. You will receive a direct lesson in Marine Corps history and in professional respect. It is a lesson you will not forget. As her words lingered in the air, Alan Palmer finally spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a calm authority that drew more attention than the general's anger. General, he said evenly, they're young. They're proud. That's good. They just need to learn where to direct it. His eyes shifted to Corporal Evans. There was no anger in them, only a deep, time-worn wisdom. Your duty isn't to be the strongest, son. It's to respect the strength that came before you. Humility is the heaviest weight you'll ever carry, but it's also the one that will take you the furthest. He rested his hand on the stock of the orange rifle, and in that instant another memory returned, sharper this time. He was in a rough workshop, the air heavy with the smell of machine oil and damp earth. He was younger then, his hands steady as he worked the receiver. On a cot nearby lay the pilot whose leg he had just splinted, weak with fever. Why orange, Al? The pilot had asked faintly. Alan didn't look up from his work. Because I only plan on firing one shot, he answered. After that, I want to be easy to find one way or another. The memory was vivid now, a testament to a steady kind of courage. The old man's actions were beyond the understanding of the young soldiers who faced him. He had created a beacon that could either lead to his rescue or mark his end. Everything depended on one improbable shot. The consequences came quickly and firmly. General Marcus kept her promise. Corporal Evans and his unit spent the next month assigned to an exhausting remedial duty. They didn't just study history, they experienced it firsthand. Their days were filled with cleaning and restoring historical artifacts in the base museum, while their evenings were spent writing essays on the lives of Medal of Honor recipients. The process humbled them in a way no physical discipline could. The account of the old man with the orange rifle spread across the base with remarkable speed. It became both a warning against arrogance and a reminder that true heroes often live quietly among them, unrecognized. Soon after, an official directive required all personnel to attend a yearly seminar on veteran relations and respect for elders. Weeks later, Corporal Evans found himself back in the base library, this time by choice. He was absorbed in declassified mission reports from wars fought 50 years earlier. The door opened and Alan Palmer entered. The older man moved with the same calm determination, heading toward the engineering section. Evans's pulse quickened. He rose to his feet, his chair scraping softly against the floor. He approached the elderly man, his hands clasped behind his back. "Posture straight, Mr. Palmer," he said quietly, his voice low but steady. "Sir, I wanted to offer a proper apology. There's no excuse for how I acted. I was arrogant and I was wrong. Truly wrong. I am sorry." Alan Palmer paused and studied the young Marine. In his eyes, he saw genuine regret, a young man humbled and beginning to grow into maturity. Palmer gave a small, forgiving smile. "I told you, son," he said with warmth. "Humility, it suits you. You carry it well." He gave a nod and the two men shared a brief moment of silent understanding. The lesson had been absorbed. The following week, the range was closed for a special demonstration. General Marcus stood with Colonel Price and several senior officers. Corporal Evans and his squad were present as well, keeping a respectful distance. Alan Palmer lay at the bench in the prone position, his orange rifle steady before him. At the general's request, he was there to show what the weapon could achieve. The 400-meter target, the very one Evans had once dismissed as unreachable with a toy, flickered faintly in the distance. There was no ceremony. Palmer adjusted the scope with smooth, efficient movements. He tested the wind, his sharp eyes reading the invisible shifts in the air. For a full minute he remained still, as though he were part of the landscape itself. Then came the shot, a single crisp crack almost understated in sound. For several seconds nothing seemed to happen. Then the distant monitor beside the general lit up, a glowing green dot in the very center of the target. A flawless bullseye at 400 meters. The crowd gasped. This was more than an impressive shot. It was one that seemed to push the limits of possibility, a demonstration that redefined what they believed could be done. The legend of the ghost with the orange rifle was no longer a tale from the past. It had become a reality they had witnessed with their own eyes. If Alan Palmer's story of quiet strength and hidden courage inspired you, please like this video and share it with someone who values our veterans. Subscribe to Veteran Valor for more stories of the everyday heroes among us. Your support helps us continue honoring their legacy.